Morning, Charles.
Hello again, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. I'm still well.
I don't know that I'm spectacular anymore. I feel like a little bit of that morning enthusiasm is wearing off, but I'm at least well, maybe better.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're still figuring things out, right? In terms of
exactly.
Bulk recording our episodes here, so maybe we need to get a little bit more caffeine or something, a little more Monster or something going, and
then the next round,
enthusiasm back.
Next round of bulk recording will probably be at the studio. I hope, at least. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
how our timetable goes.
We are overdue for that. We just got to pull the trigger and get that started here. So I am excited for that.
Yeah, the big decision is, I know you want to hit the ground running. I kind of feel like I want to reorient the table and spin it 90 degrees before we start. But
we'll talk about that. We're not going to talk about that now, but we will talk about that.
All right.
I don't want any more things getting in the way of us just starting. And anyway, but we'll talk about it.
All right.
I'm open to changing it if we don't like.
If you agree to never use your closet again, and we could just leave the table where it sits, then I will be on board with leaving it where it is.
Okay. All right. Well, my vote is we record the way it is and see how it goes, and then and work out some kinks so we got some momentum, and then we can change the table after that. I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, I just hate that we can't tape any of the wires yet until we have the table in a place where we can leave it. We can't tape any of the wires, and that's driving me crazy.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're going to see
fight about it later
and stuff. Yeah. All right.
Tonight, when you're trying to listen to your favorite EDM music, I'll be like screaming in your ear, Dan, I had an idea about the studio. Pay attention to me. Don't pay attention to this thing that we paid for.
I'm sure I will not ignore you. Okay. So let's get into atomic attraction, this chapter here, because I put some cycles in this morning to dig into some of this stuff.
All right, fair enough. So did I. Okay, so the first section that I didn't tell you to prepare for, but we've both read this book at least once all the way through, so I know you'll be able to jump in with me on this. The first chapter we're going to cover says maintain mystery, which encourages men to understand sort of the balance between to be an honest and candid person who is comfortable sharing details about themselves, that is a prized skill among humans in general, and I would say men who are interested in women specifically. The idea that you're willing to be like, hey, here's who I am, here's what I think, here's what I feel, and the world may take it or leave it, but this is who I am. I mean, I think that is definitely a characteristic that is prized. Prized because of its rarity, I would say. Mm-hmm. The opposite side of that, though, is being too available and too responsive, and being, using frequent communication and excessive disclosure as a crutch to try to get things from people, try to get people to do what you want them to do and treat you the way you want to be treated, by constantly being in their face and constantly sharing things about yourself in an effort to build intimacy prematurely or inappropriately.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely a nice guy tactic. It's kind of hey, I'm sharing all this information with you, and because I'm doing that, you should do all these things that I want you to do, right? Feel attraction towards me, and get intimate with me, and build this relationship with me, and that doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and when it comes to actionable advice, or I hesitate to say rules or policies, because that just seems too hard. But for actionable advice, what I would say is, when it comes to sharing things about yourself that are personal about your personal history, whether that's your childhood, your previous romantic relationships, difficulty you've had with your education or with your career. Number one, I would say almost never do that not in person. If you've made the choice to share that information with somebody, it should be in person. It should not be over a text message or even over a phone call. But beyond that, I would say even reconsider whether you need to share those things at all. Because when people say that they want you to be honest and open with them, they're not saying, I need you to completely disclose every emotional state and thought that you experience to me.
Yeah.
So that I can know exactly what's going on in your head at all times. And I would say even if somebody, such as a girlfriend or a wife, did say that she wanted that,
that's unhealthy.
Yeah, it's unhealthy, and I don't even know that it's true. I mean, I think a woman who would say something like that means something when she says it, but I don't think she means what those actual objective words.
I mean, to me, if I heard that, what I translate that is she's upset about something, doesn't trust me about something, and wants information that she doesn't have. And now she's like, tell me and it's just upset. Like there's a problem. It's not how you build a foundation of a healthy relationship.
Right. And if you have that level of disclosure with someone, whether it's one way or, unidirectional or bidirectional, it then becomes hard to tell where one person stops and the other one starts.
Yeah.
And that's where, issues like enmeshment and, codependency and things like that start to rear their ugly heads, where it's like, we're not two people in a relationship anymore. The couple is the entity and we're not individuals. It's just we live as this two-headed beast. And, that's where the quality of the relationship and the health of the relationship will certainly degrade.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been in that position in previous relationships where, not only was my partner my best friend, they were essentially my only friend, and so it definitely other aspects of the relationship, like the male-female polarization and attraction, suffered as a result of that.
Yeah, it's sad that we, not we, but people, certain sections of society, mainly, the tabloids and the news media, have, kind of promote that, where they start combining people's first names together. And now it's not Brad Jennifer, it's right. It's Jennifer, whatever. And it's like, it's now it's the couple. It's not them individually anymore. And I think a lot of traditions too, with, when it comes to, marriage and other things, some of these expressions where like you complete me, and now it's like one, two,
the two become
they
one.
have the two candles, right? They light the two candles and they light the one together, and now it's just the one. And it's just, not sustainable. Why is there this push to do that? That's why because so many people are breaking up and getting divorced.
Because it feels romantic. It strokes that, it scratches that romance itch that we all have, which, as anything is striving for connection and security, and engaging in language like that and rituals like that. It makes it feel like, okay, so I've been through this ritual with this person. So now I feel like they can't leave me, or they won't leave me. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, they can, and they might, and then and you'll have to survive that.
And I mean, it makes for, like you said, like a romantic story. And as humans, that is what we have, driven our, evolution has been based on stories, in terms of all the things that we do, and it's how we communicate. And the best. The people who can tell the best stories typically are some of the more successful people in society.
Right. Yeah. One of the points that he raises in this chapter that I think it does, almost everything we talk about in some way ties back to No More Mr. Nice Guy, right? Where if you're confident that you are an interesting person and the kind of person that people want to know more about, then you won't feel compelled to rush into all this disclosure where it's like, Ferrari and Lamborghini, they're not airing ads during the Super Bowl because they don't need to.
Right.
The people who get to a point in their life where they can afford those cars and can appreciate those cars, they will find the Ferrari and Lamborghini dealership when it's time to get one. They don't have to be sold on it. And if you can, not delude yourself, not falsely consider yourself a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, but honestly, it doesn't take that much as a man to set yourself apart from other men. I mean, you need to spend some time in the gym. You need to spend some time doing some inner work, whether that's therapy or a 12-step group or, sessions with your priest or counselor where you work out the things that are holding you back and you do some evaluation and say, okay, these are the areas that I should be better in. These are the areas that I deserve to work hard for myself in. If you take on those kinds of tasks, you will be in the vast minority of men that do that. And then you can start thinking of yourself as the Ferrari or Lamborghini and live that life and draw people to you and not have to say, okay, well, man, if I tell her about how rough my childhood was on the second date, then she'll feel sorry for me and want to be closer to me. It's like she might, as a short-term strategy, that might seem like it's getting done for you what you want to get done, but not as a long-term, sympathy is not a long-term foundation for a romantic sexual relationship. It just isn't.
No, that's not the primary driver of a male-female relationship. It's not based on sympathy.
Yeah, women don't make children with the men that they feel the sorriest for.
Right. They have no advantage. So right. There's no advantage to them to do that. It's
right.
a burden.
Yeah, that's not going to secure the genes another round around the globe. So that's not what anybody's going to be looking for. One of the phrases he uses is less is more, which I find the idea of less is more applies in so many areas of our lives where not less effort, not less thinking, but less trying to control results is always more. So less initial effort in a relationship that's brand new is certainly a good idea. Less initial investment, whether that's your time or your money or your attention, that is a good idea. Less expending energy at the beginning of a relationship. Like, again, because it has to be sustainable. It's like crash diets don't work for the long term. They work for the short term. If you want to have a very passionate, tumultuous 4-week relationship with a girl, then by all means, overinvest in every way that you possibly can, and maybe you'll both get what you're looking for out of it. But rarely would somebody say, okay, what I want is a very wild and crazy 4-week relationship with somebody after which we either hate each other or never talk again.
Yeah, that's...
I'm not looking for that.
No, look, you're setting yourself up with some crazy habits in terms of the way you relate to each other if you're going to do that. And the same thing with the weight loss too. You're going to be, implementing some extreme measures that are not going to be sustainable, and there's going to be negative consequences that are either swept under the rug or kind of brushed aside or are able to be ignored temporarily, but they're not going to go away and they're going to come back to bite you. And that's the problem. Right. Whereas if you're doing it in a little bit more of a slower, methodical approach and there's less riffraff and all these other negative consequences that need to kind of be dealt with. Yeah, you're learning how to do it in the right way, and also you're not investing all of your time and energy. So, like you said, but because it's less, it is more valuable, right? Less of anything is typically more valuable.
Yes. And it even comes down to, just from a practical standpoint, it's like we all have only so many deeply personal details that we can share with people. And if you front load your relationship with all these deeply personal details, you're going to run out of things to say. And, you're going to get somebody used to this radical, excessive level of personal disclosure. And then once you've told all the stories and all the experiences and all the struggles, then you're just going to be repeating stuff they've already heard, which, I mean, you and I have both talked about that. When you have a partner that is constantly struggling with the same difficulties and not doing anything to address them, the goal for them is just to talk about it, not to fix it, but just to have the, I guess, catharsis or experience of, I've got these bad feelings and I need to, and they don't feel good in here. So if I put them on you, then, which, look, a part of that is going to be, some of that's going to be necessary in any healthy relationship where you do share your burdens with somebody that you live with, that you're committed to, that you make kids with, whatever. But yeah, if it's just, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that my career has stalled, or I'm carrying these extra pounds, or I wake up tired with no energy, I'm uncomfortable with the results that I'm getting, and I'm not uncomfortable enough to, research methods and practices to change them. I'm uncomfortable enough to quietly live with it. So if I just tell you about it, that'll soothe some of my discomfort, but I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to put my bad feelings on you, and, don't tell me how or why I should change anything. Just listen to me complain, because I'll feel 5% better if I complain, and then I won't get to the point where I need to do anything about it. And yeah. I'm sure I've done that, and I've been on the receiving side of it too. And it's not fun for either party. So yeah, that said, I think you should have people in your life that you can have those complaints with. But is it the romantic partner that you want to go to sleep with and possibly have sex with tonight? It probably is not that person.
Right. Yeah. It's correct. And that's, again, the danger of going, hey, we are one unit now. Right. Now then that pushes people to think, okay, this person is my end all be all for everything. And they should be my best friend, my lover, my counselor, my parent, my child, all those other roles in one. And that is not possible. And that is, you're asking a tall order from your partner, and it's not fair. And it's a burden on the other person as well. So yeah, that's why it's, really important to maintain, those friendships and those independent experiences, in my opinion, so that you continue to leverage all of the things that you've built in your life to become the great person that you are, and you're not letting them go just because you decide you're going to be in a committed relationship with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, think about those roles you just mentioned, where you're looking for this woman in your life to be your girlfriend, your mother, your best friend, your therapist.
Maybe those are four. I've done that too.
Potentially, yes. So we'll stop at the four. We'll stop at girlfriend, mother, therapist, and best friend.
Okay.
In that list of four, there is only 25% of those that I want to see naked and that want to see me naked, ideally.
That's a good point, right? All those other things, right? Yeah. You don't want them in that role when you're seeing them naked, because now things are awkward.
Correct. So you treat one woman, you put her in those four roles.
Yeah.
And it's not ridiculous to say, I wonder if that will result in her only being 25% as attracted to me as if she only had the one role.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess, okay. So it depends on how much time you're spending in each role, right?
Correct.
I think a little bit.
I'm definitely oversimplifying it to make an example, but yes.
Yeah, but no, that's a great way of coming at it. Right.
So every minute you're treating your girlfriend like your mother or your therapist is a minute that she is not being turned on by you.
Yeah. And here's the rub with that, no pun intended. We are taught, I mean, a lot of us are taught what it's like to have a relationship with a mother or with a best friend, but we don't, like, where do you learn other than, I mean, these days we can look at some books and watch, but maybe it's media or whatever, what it looks like to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, on either side. We're getting that from TV and movies and stuff. And that's, a lot of that isn't realistic because, again, it's pushing that whole one unit thing. A lot of it is a little bit, not so much now, but yeah. So, we've got a lot more experience treating, I mean, I know at least I do, I grew up with my mom and my sister. So, I mean, my whole life. So that is how my default is when it comes to relating to women. And it takes a lot of swimming upstream and re-education and, stumbling and falling and messing things up in order to figure out, hey, well, what does a relationship with a girlfriend look like? What is that exactly? Like, how do you communicate? What kinds of things are you doing to foster, that chemistry, the sexual chemistry, as well as keeping that interest and, not doing things that you would normally do or communicate with a mom and a sister.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, most of the cues you get from that are going to be based on what your parents have modeled. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to see it the most at the youngest age, where it has the most effect on you. And, how many of us come from families where mom and dad are married and in love with each other and, investing time and effort in the relationship. And I would say it's a rarity among my friends that they had that experience growing up where they saw,
for sure,
the marriage of their two birth parents being modeled for them in a positive way. And so, yeah, it's if you're not seeing it there, then yeah, you are going to get it from media and your friends' parents, and your friends' parents probably aren't doing any better job than your parents were. So,
and
it's, yeah.
And they're only letting you see, for the most of it, what they want you to see, right? So a lot of it is going to be filtered out. It's not like you're a fly on the wall or sitting on their shoulder watching all of the interactions that they're having, right? A lot of it is just when you happen to be at your friend's house,
right?
And you're seeing the way their parents are interacting, or, and then even then they know you're there. So they might be acting in a different way than they normally would. So yeah, that's almost useless. That information.
Well, I mean, I would say,
opinion.
it's certainly more real than the media is, but
sure,
but it's not.
Sure. But it may not be healthy. But
it's not
you may not be teaching anything useful to you either.
Right? Almost certainly not, because again, nobody's.
It's not a class.
It's hard for me to think of a family that I know personally, husband and wife are together and happy and not, constantly bitching and moaning about each other or their life or their careers or whatever. And they've got kids that seem to be well adjusted and trauma free. It's like, it feels like, I don't know, maybe I just hang out with scumbags, but I don't know anybody who's in that dream scenario that I think all children are entitled to. And it just doesn't seem to happen, at least in Western culture. I mean, everybody's got major things to struggle with, and few of them. I mean, and I'm not talking about life where nothing bad happens to you as a kid, but a life where your parents are dedicated to their relationships with themselves and each other and their kids. I don't see a lot of that happening.
Right. It's right. And because a lot of that isn't happening, I think that's why, so many of us struggle with that. What's interesting is, kind of, the next chapter here, exploit her weakness for words. He said a statement that sent me off, doing some research this morning. Not being upset. No. But okay. Just, I was like, cause he said that, women typically, men are a lot more visual and women are a lot more auditory. I'm like, is that true? Are women actually more auditory? And I did some Googling, and actually a hearing aid website came up, Belltone. And, and a couple of other ones, came up. They all are really kind of saying the same thing, which is, women, actually, they hear differently, and take that information differently than men do. And based on our brain. So we've got more gray matter, but they've got a lot more white matter. And basically what that means is women are using a different part of their brain when processing information that they're hearing. They also can hear higher pitched tones and sounds. And so, and that's kind of shown as people get older as well, is that women typically have less hearing loss than men. So, women who complain about men don't ever listen or whatever, there's some like science behind that. Right. But what was really interesting to me was that, the part of the brain in men that, we use for our hearing is dominated by the left part of our brain, which is really, based on, listening and speech, whereas women, it's a little bit of both sides. And so what that means is they have the listening and speech, but they also have the nonverbal cues. So the part of her brain that's processing the information is a nonverbal. So it's body language. And that's why women are so good at just like naturally seem to know, like understand body language. And I'm always amazed when I'm talking to a woman and they're like, oh yeah, I'm listening to multiple conversations at the same time in a restaurant, hearing this and hearing that, or whatever. And I'm like, wow, I can barely pay attention to what you're saying, And so, it's really impressive when they do that. So, I thought that was very interesting and kind of really supports, what some of the things that he's talking about, how important storytelling is, how that's can be a very attractive trait in a man when you're communicating and getting to know a woman.
Yeah, I do feel like he may have undersold the power of words as they affect men, though, where I'm okay with his original suggestion that, basically he says the way that a man can kind of get thrown off his game and shaken up a little bit by being in the presence of a beautiful woman, a woman can have that same effect if she's in the presence of a man who's really good with his words and is able to. And I'll accept that, that's true. I'd like to, dive deeper before I, make any kind of endorsements or decisions based on it. But this guy generally doesn't make up nonsense. He cites studies and he says things that are pretty on target. But what I will say is when a man is in the presence of a beautiful woman who also knows the things to say to that man, then it's completely game over for him. I mean, if you're in the presence of a very attractive woman who knows how to use her words on you and make you feel the way she wants you to feel, then that's where the real superpower is. And I would say the opposite is probably true as well, where you've got a guy who knows the words to say to evoke an emotional response in a woman, and he's attractive and he has style and he's put together, then that's really it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think in both cases, the person who masters both of those things, who absolutely wrings every piece of benefit out of their physical appearance that they can, and also gets every piece of benefit out of their ability to communicate, that's the position you want to be in as a man or a woman. You want to be the person that has both, not where it's just a binary of men like this and women like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm going to say, why stop there? Right. We've got 5 senses. Some people say 6. So why not make sure you smell good? Right.
Yeah.
Why not, so all the,
make sure you taste good.
It tastes right. Well,
make sure you're putting off good vibes.
Right. But right. I mean, but here's the thing, right? Those all factor into everything. And what, if you know that you're wearing, so one can kind of help the other, right? So if you know you've got, the cologne that, you've gotten some compliments on and you're wearing that, it's going to build your confidence, right? And now that's going to help your speech. That's going to help what you're talking about, right? You might even stand up a little straighter. So now it's helping your physical appearance and how you look. And all those things, nothing exists in isolation. We always talk about that, right? And all those things are, can help each other out. So yeah, so, all right, you're a little overweight. You haven't made it to the gym in a while. All right. Maybe you're not great at telling stories. Well, what can you do? All right. So work on the things that you can do, right? So, some of the things that you advised on in terms of, way to cut your hair, things to wear, your dress, how you smell, making sure you shower and scrub 2 or 3 times with soap. So, if you are tasted, you are going to taste good, Yeah. I was listening last night, on my drive home from the campground to a couple of female comedians talking on XM, and they were talking about one woman was used to be a flight attendant, and she was on this really long flight with and ended up hooking up with a pilot, and she was completely grossed out before she started to make out with him because she thought he'd been flying for 8 hours and his penis is going to taste disgusting. And she's like, and I couldn't taste a thing. She's like, it was unbelievable. How did he pull this off? And she was like so excited about it. Like he didn't taste bad. Like she's like, he had no taste. Cause that was the first thing that the woman interviewing her was asking her, like, well, how did it taste? No taste at all. And she's like, what? And they went off about it. Like how there's no taste from a sweaty guy, for like 5 hours. So, taste is important.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't see the connection without one sense to this discussion, but you definitely illustrated it for me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and so that's another thing. I feel like one of the most common pieces of advice I seem to give on this podcast is for guys to have good friends and have friends that you can talk to about things like this. Because you and I had this conversation not too long ago where I said, "Hey Dan, when we're going out and hanging out, and is there anything that I'm doing that I might not know that I'm doing that is holding me back and is taking me down a notch socially?" And you're like, "Yeah, you can kind of zone out on your phone and act disinterested." And I said, "That's because I am disinterested, and that's why I take out my phone."
At least you're being your authentic self. You got that part down.
Right, but like we were talking about, going tonight to this, I don't know, concert. Is it called a concert? Is it considered a concert?
Performance? Yeah, I guess. Yeah, show.
Okay, whatever it is,
called a show.
Okay,
you're going to a show.
Yeah, like I will. I'm sure have the impulse to just pull out my phone and start, scrolling through Instagram or whatever. I will try to at least make that. I'll figure out a way to make that one step more difficult than it would be normally so that I can try to stay a little bit more engaged. But yeah, so basically what I'm saying is, guys, have some friends, or at least a friend that you can say, okay, when we go out, do I smell good? And when I talk and tell a story, does it make sense? Is it fun to listen to, or am I boring? Do I look weird with the way that I dress when we go out, or the way that I style my hair or don't style my hair or whatever? Like have a friend that you can have those kinds of conversations with to say, okay, look, is there something like, even couch it to say, I appreciate that there might be something that you haven't mentioned to me because it would hurt my feelings. I'm giving you the go ahead to say, okay, when you go out, you do this thing, and maybe it does or doesn't annoy me, but I could see how it might push other people away. So this is the thing I would say you want to think about. And so be the friend that's willing to say that when asked, and also be the friend that's willing to ask it so that you can kind of figure out where the holes in your game are. And, look, and the other thing is definitely hang out with people who are as put together or more than you are, because, if you're the least bummy guy in your circle of friends, then you don't have anybody you can ask this of. And so you probably need to up that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. One of the pieces of advice in this chapter is that communication with the women in your life, for the most part, should be light and relaxed.
Mm.
And I would almost say the majority of conversations you have in life should be light and relaxed.
Yeah.
You should not be spending so much of your time having contentious, heated arguments, whether it's about stuff in your personal life or at work or, political, societal issues. Just don't spend time being ramped up and activated and having constant, difficult conversations with people. I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah. I do believe, the energy that you put out there is the energy you're going to attract. And so people who are looking to, if you want to have those serious and, gut wrenching arguments and conversations and stuff like that, you're going to bring people over to you who are also interested in that. You're not going to bring over people who are looking to have the lighthearted conversations. So don't expect anything different.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say, yes, obviously we understand that if you're in a committed relationship with someone where you're trying to build a family, build a future, even build a company, yes, you are going to have serious discussions about here's how we spend our money. Here's, where we're going to go on vacation. Here's where we're going to live. Here's where we're going to raise our kids. I mean, you're going to have very serious, tough conversations, but you need to make those deliberate and the exception where your day-to-day interactions with somebody, it's got to be fun and it's got to be light and not feel like a drag. Because if it feels like a drag, either you're with a person who gets off on conversations that feel like a drag, or you're going to grind them down and they're gonna enjoy talking to you less and less as time goes by. Yeah,
this kind of reminds me of some advice, big brotherly advice I gave my little sister years ago. Oh my God, it must have been, I think I was like in high school, and I was like, she was constantly fighting with the boyfriend that she was dating, and all the time, and I was just like, how I asked her, like, well, percentage wise, like how often you guys, aren't fighting, and she's like, I don't know, 40% of the time. I'm like, so why are you in this relationship? Are you in this relationship to be upset 60% of the time? If why do people get in relationships? Because it's supposed to bring joy and happiness and fulfillment and excitement. And if you're, unhappy more than half the time, what are you doing?
Yeah. Our heroes in the relationship research space, the Gottmans, developed a magic ratio for this, where in a healthy and happy relationship, there's a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions.
Oh, wow. So that's, again, the 80-20 rule.
80-20, yeah.
Pareto's principle applies to everything. Damn.
Is 80-20...
No, that's 4-to-1. That's 4-to-1. You're right. I apologize. Yeah. No. It's higher.
Yeah, it's higher than...
So it's 85-15 kind of?
Yeah, closer to that.
About that?
Yeah, so for every negative interaction you have with your partner, you need to have 5 positive interactions. And if you're not reaching that ratio, and a lot of us, I mean, I know when I read and when I hear that number, I can instantly say, no, I don't have that. And yeah. I would assume the people that do have that can instantly say, yeah, that sounds about right. Because I don't think it requires record keeping, but
but I feel like if you're not putting in the work, you're not. I don't think anything's just going to naturally gravitate towards 85-15. And I feel like, based on my experience in my life, is I've never really gotten close to that.
Same. Yeah.
And so, and in all fairness, I haven't put in the right amount of work that I know now that needs to be done. And I have not been as intentional as I think I need to be in order to get there.
Yeah, I would say I've even had some relationships where the positive and negative interactions were probably pretty even, but both rare. And it was just a sea of neutral reactions in the middle.
Yeah. That's how I always end up in my relationships at the end. For way too long, it's just a sea of neutrality where there's
we're not fighting like cats and dogs, but we're also not complimenting each other and having. It's just we're roommates, we're friends, we're associates, And, there's not high highs and there's not low lows. And that is, that's not the way that you build a happy and healthy relationship with somebody.
It's not what I want.
Yeah, me neither. All right. Now, given all this talk about, conversations and how they should go and what the attitude should be, again, the caution here is you should not overplan your conversations and your communication with someone. You should not, constantly be thinking of, I'll say this, then I hope she'll say this, then I'll say this, and then she'll feel this way. And I feel like the nice guy in us will tend to try to plan things out that way, where we say what we need to say to elicit the response that will lead to the state that we want to feel. And so, it's a lot of planning and a lot of giving to get and a lot of trying to manipulate the situation. And so,
and what that breeds is dependency, right? That shows basically a neediness and saying, hey, look, I'm not going to be okay unless these things happen, right? Come to fruition, like that I'm getting these things. And part of this is, learning to build your other parts of your life and who you are as a person to the point of where if those things happen, great. If they don't, great. Right. It's you really, you become outcome independent. So you feel free to actually be yourself and not really do or say or be something else in order to get something that you quote unquote think you need.
Right. And I'm glad you used the word neediness, because, that is something that I feel like almost every time that word comes up, there needs to be a clarification to say our sort of natural interpretation of neediness, in my opinion, is usually wrong, where the person who says, hey, Dan, we're partners on this podcast and we're friends. And for me to get what I need out of this relationship, I need you to do X, Y, and Z.
I need you to turn the table in the studio. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is not needy. What's needy is I need Dan to behave a certain way so that I feel like he loves me enough or cares about me enough. And I can't tell him that. So I need to, manipulate circumstances in a way and sort of tweak his incentives behind the scenes so that he'll do the things for me that I need without me asking for them. And that's what makes a man needy. When he embarks on this behind the scenes game that he's trying to play with somebody to get what he wants out of them, that's needy. Going to someone and saying, hey, currently you're doing this, it's not working for me, I need you to do this instead, that is not being needy.
Yeah. No, that's a great distinction for sure. Yeah.
And it takes a lot more guts and courage to go to somebody and say, I need you to do this for me. For me to feel happy, healthy, whatever in this relationship, I need this from you. That's a lot harder than, let's see, let me just play this one man game behind the scenes and see if I can get him or her to give me what I need.
And I think maybe part of that could be by coming out with it and not hiding it behind something else.
Yeah.
You are basically saying, hey, if this doesn't happen, there's going to be some sort of consequences. And maybe it's not a breakup, but maybe it's something, but there will be some sort of, you're kind of setting a boundary at that point when you're saying, I need you to do da-da-da. And I think you have to respect somebody who's going to do that. And at least, right. Because now it's clear. All right. If this is what, my partner needs, I now know what they need. And it's up to me to decide, is that something that I'm willing to do? Right. And if not, then they're basically saying, hey, there's going to be some sort of consequences for that, or more likely that there's going to be. Whereas if you are, sorry, oh my God,
so unprofessional.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why this. I shouldn't have called. Anyway, so whereas if somebody is, doing the nice guy routine where it's a covert contract and you're trying to manipulate the situation to get what you need, you aren't really, you're being sneaky about it, first of all. And second of all, you aren't really having the balls to say, this is important enough to me that there's going to be some sort of consequences if these needs aren't met. Because you're not really saying it to anybody. You're not putting it out there. Right. And that's a little bit of a weaker stance to take.
Yeah. As you were saying that, and you always have to be careful about, implying an ultimatum or something like that where it could come across like you're threatening, you're saying, do this for me or else. I personally always do struggle with like, okay, I want to say that this is a need, and I want to say, or this is a boundary that, this is absolutely something that needs to be addressed, but not, hey, you got to do this or else. I almost think of it the way, if a parent finds something in their kid's room that the kid's not supposed to have, whether it's, cigarettes or drugs or pornography or something like this, as a good parent, you don't confront them and start screaming at them about it. You don't just subtly start treating them differently because there's like, oh, this, idealized version of my son or daughter is gone now because I caught them with this thing. It's more of a situation where, you invite them to the living room to sit down and have a conversation, and you just put that thing you found right in the middle of the coffee table. And it's like, okay, this is not a family relationship where we pretend like this thing doesn't exist. We're going to just put it out there, and I'm going to say how I feel about it. You're going to say how you feel about it. But what we're not going to do is pretend that it's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like having that conversation with a partner to say, hey, I've got this need and it's currently not being met, and we need to talk about it. We need to acknowledge that I'm dealing with this and that you're involved, and now let's have a dialogue about this thing that we previously haven't acknowledged between the two of us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a healthy way to go about having the conversation. And I hope I didn't come across as saying, by you bringing it up as a need, that you're absolutely implying it's going to be a threat, right?
No,
like it's you do this or else, right?
That's codependent Charles reading into the but what if? That is not anything you said wrong.
Yeah.
That's me saying, okay, but if I just put it out there like that, I need you to do this. And I've even had partners bring a need to me that way. They're like, hey, I need this to change. And my immediate reaction is, oh, are you saying or else? Go ahead and say the or else. You're implying an or else. Why don't you say the or else? And that has been my reaction before. Yeah. And yeah, it's, so I'm empathizing with the person who might be like me that sort of here's an implied or else that hasn't been said.
Well, let me offer a little color to that perspective is that, maybe they're just not, using that word need could definitely be triggering, right? And for a lot of people, right? So maybe, the other thing to think about here is just put yourself in their shoes and say, okay, well, first of all, they're struggling probably to bring this up to you in a way, because they still care about you and they don't want to hurt you. So they're struggling a little bit in terms of just bringing it up, but
sure.
They probably don't have all of the ideas and suggestions and interpretations of what's going on that you do, that you can offer at that point. So
certainly, yeah.
Even that first statement of what they quote unquote need may not actually be accurate in terms of, the only thing that is going to quench their thirst or make them feel the way they want to feel. Right. And that's where the other person has the opportunity to make some suggestions. Right. And that's where the communication, the compromise comes in and go, okay, well, and help me understand. Right. So you ask questions like, did you, when you say this is how I'm interpreting it.
Right.
Is that accurate? Right. So you maybe use your steelman idea here.
Yeah.
To say, hey, am I really understanding what you're getting at? And a lot of times, I don't remember who said this, but there's like 6 levels of communication. It's like what I said, what you heard, and then it's like what I meant, and then what you think I meant, right? Yes. And then it's like all these different flavors of when somebody says a statement to somebody else. So, I think a good approach is start with your steelman, and and it just makes sure you're on the same page with understanding what they're actually asking,
Yeah.
So,
Or like you and I have talked about before, where whenever you're going to ask someone for something, never take the roundabout way. Like the example you and I talked about was like, okay, if I say, "Hey Dan, what are you doing next Saturday? Do you have any plans for next Saturday?" You don't know if I'm about to ask you to help me move or if I'd like to take you out to a nice steak dinner.
right.
And so I'm just saying, what are you doing next Saturday? And then you have to be like, you can't say, well, it depends. So that's where you and I talked about where it's always lead with the need. That's the thing to do. Lead with the need. So start by saying, "Hey Dan, I gotta move my camper next Saturday. If you're around and if you're willing, I could really use your help."
Click.
Instead of, by the way, when I was in Home Depot yesterday and I mentioned the fact of you helping me replace my awning, all I got was crickets.
Oh, I didn't hear. Dude,
I texted you. I said, for one of our next projects, I need you to help me replace the awning on my camper, and you did not address it at all.
I must have got not a problem. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I don't even remember you asking me that.
I assumed you missed it, but I thought it was funny. I even did the little cringy emoji, like, I'm about to ask you to help me do something I don't know exactly how to do and I've never done before, and you didn't address it, so I thought I'd tease you about it later.
Listen, man, I must have been, I totally missed all of that. I may have read it and said, I may have interpreted it as, hey, I'm going to do this, not I need your help to do this. And so I was like, okay, so you're going to replace the awning. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. No problem.
I know you would be, and I'm just teasing you about it, but I thought it was funny that I brought
ironic.
it up.
Oh my God, that's funny.
And you didn't mention it, but anyway,
there's your answer.
So exactly, what day are you doing that? I got to wash my hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing where getting back to the idea of lead with the need, you don't have to use the word need. You could say, "Hey, look, I've been thinking about something. Every time this thing happens or this thing doesn't happen, I feel kind of shitty, and I don't like feeling shitty. When I feel shitty, I'm not the best man I could be. I'm not the best partner I could be. So I know you don't want me to feel shitty either. So is there something we can do to work together so that this thing happens less shitty or happens more, and so I feel less shitty?"
Yeah.
That could be the way that conversation happens. And with that, I would say there's very little implication of or else.
Yeah.
At least I didn't feel my or else spider sense didn't go off when I heard myself saying it. So maybe that might work for somebody else too. I don't know. Right.
Like I said, there's certain words people use that are just going to trigger certain emotions, right? And need just might be one of them for you. Right. And it probably would be for me too. Right. If somebody's that's a strong word. When somebody says I need, it's like versus I'd like, or, I want.
Yeah. But I feel I agree with you, but I also feel like the burden is on me to get okay with hearing I need. It's not on them to not use the word. If one of us has to change, it's definitely me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. There were a couple other things. I know we're getting about 53 minutes in. I want to definitely cover a couple things before we stop, which is, one thing he said was, don't have heavy negative conversations about things like politics, religion, social issues. I don't agree with that. Talking about those things for me is an intimate experience with my friends and my partners, and I don't want it to be unpleasant. I don't want it to turn into, an emotionally escalated argument by any means, but I feel like I've got the place in this world that I would like to carve out for myself is the one where I think about and talk about important things that affects me and the people around me. And so the idea of, women aren't for having serious conversations with, you'll just bum them out. It's like, no, not the ones I'm interested in spending time with. And so, I'm going to, now look, if you do have a partner, where those kinds of conversations can either wear on them or trigger them, then you need to be kind of cognizant of the fact that it may be your responsibility to say, hey, I saw this news story about this thing that's going on in our country, in our world, whatever, and I got some strong opinions on it. I'd like to talk about it. Are you up for that right now, or is now not the time? I think that's a reasonable thing to ask the people in your life. When you want to talk about something that is either hurting people or is controversial or, is very polarizing, if you know that you're with somebody that isn't always in a headspace to get into the weeds on stuff like that, it's probably a good idea to give them the courtesy of, hey, this is on my mind. Can you get into it with me right now, or should we talk about it later?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach because,
and if their answer is no, I can never talk about it, I don't like having these conversations, then you need to decide, okay, well, maybe, how important is that to me? Is that something I can get with my friends, or is that something I need from my romantic relationship? And then, you have to act accordingly.
There you go, throwing that N-word around, Charles.
Yeah, that's me.
Need.
One thing I knew which one you meant. I was
okay.
I'm pretty sure I didn't say the other one, so you must have meant need.
I wasn't sure. I didn't quite get enough sarcasm from your tone. That's why I clarified it.
The other one that I wanted to mention is even if you are somehow able to keep it light and relaxed, still never brag about yourself. And I would say never even get close to bragging about yourself. I mean, one of the things you and I talk about all the time is whenever you and I get dressed up to go for an evening out and we have an interaction with another man at the bar, at the restaurant, whatever, it's happened, I'd say more than a handful of times, where that guy instantly feels like he needs to start telling stories about how successful he is to us.
Yeah, that's true.
Whether it's how successful he is in business or in getting women or whatever, it's just we get these guys that feel like they have to start selling us on the story of how great they are. And again, you and I just sort of give each other this knowing glance of, hey, Dan, remember how the guy who's really successful at these things never feels the need to tell people?
Yeah. I mean,
so, and I would say women have a better radar than even you and I do, probably, of detecting the bragging bullshit artists than we do.
Yeah.
And I'll bet the guys that do it to us probably ramp it up tenfold to do it to women.
Oh, could be, or it could just be, we decided to wear jackets and now they feel like they need to, like suit jackets, and they feel like they need to, because they're not wearing something that dressy in order to keep our interest and be in our level. They need to compensate in some way, and they end up overdoing it a little bit.
I know, but even that's even cringy. Even if that is the motivation, it's still like, oh, this guy put on a jacket, so now I have to prove myself to him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, people aren't perfect.
How you do anything is how you do everything, Dan. So
right.
I'll bet it's not just a unique reaction they have to suit jackets. It's probably,
that's fair.
It's probably guys with a good physique. It's probably guys wearing an expensive watch. It's probably pretty girls. It's probably everybody that has any kind of a indicator of status that might put them above how they feel about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop looking around, start looking within,
Yeah. So do not sell your accomplishments to people. And again, I mean, the people who have the accomplishments, they come up eventually in an organic way, and they manage to impress people, but they don't do it by trying to cleverly shoehorn it in or by just blatantly say, I made $1 million last year. It's like, and the guy who did make $1 million last year and still feels the need to tell people he made $1 million last year, that might be the worst of the worst. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, well, now I understand why you're chasing this money, so you can have conversations like this in bars with strangers.
Seems like a lot of work.
It sure does. Okay. you mentioned before about how valuable storytelling is and how it's important to be a good storyteller, because when you're a good storyteller, people assume you're smart. People assume you have high status. I don't know what resources are out there to practice becoming a better storyteller other than telling stories, but I feel like if you're a crappy storyteller and you don't know it, you could just continue being a crappy storyteller. So I would say look into what you can do to be a better storyteller.
So I did that.
Oh, awesome.
I want to be a better storyteller.
What'd you find?
So there's storytelling coaches, just like there's a coach for everything.
Wow,
there's storytelling coaches. A lot of them are focused on executives and businesses and telling a story around a product or around data. And so that was kind of where a lot of them were leaning towards, or, being able to, communicate a little bit better with employees and people that you're managing. But, the principles are pretty much the same, regardless of who your target audience is. And so, yeah, I actually reached out. So we'll see what they come back with, but there's quite a few out there. If you Google storytelling coach.
That would be somebody I would definitely be interested in talking to on the show. We should.
Yeah. If you think about it, a lot of it also is surrounded. They have services, prepare a TED Talk, right? So if you are people who are looking to become a TED Talk or a public speaker, so it's not much different, I feel like, than Toastmasters. But there might be a little bit more, personalized one-on-one.
Yeah. I was going to say, I would be interested in somebody who focuses on, and again, if there's a niche you can think of, then there's probably somebody who's serving it. Like, how do I get better at telling my personal story? Like, How do I get better at telling, either funny things that happened to me or what my college experience was like? Like, how do I take? That's
what I'm looking for, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, me too. I'd be interested in that as well. So another way that I think you can help and this occurred to me while I was rereading this chapter this morning, that you can help yourself out in being a better storyteller. If you have a solid journaling practice, then you're going to be able to refer back to things that happened to you and ideally how you felt about those things as they were happening, and be able to use that because the good stories always have an emotional component to them.
Absolutely.
Where it's not just, here are the facts. First I did this, then I did this, then I did that, then I did that, then I did that and went to sleep. Like that's not the kind of story.
That's right.
That is just you recounting an
shopping
event.
List.
Right, exactly. Where the emotional part is huge. So if you're every day something's going to happen to you and you're going to have feelings about that thing, and if you do a good job of journaling that, then that's something that you can mine later on for being able to share and connect with people.
Yeah, one of the best tips that I've heard is you want to paint a picture. You want to try to use your words to describe things and paint a picture as part of that story.
Yeah, I mean that's what good all the successful authors who are on the fiction bestsellers list, that's what they do. They're able to go into so much detail that you feel like you're in the setting that they're describing. And that really needs to be part of your storytelling. The other thing I wanted to say was develop the skill of asking great follow-up questions, because when you're trying to get to know somebody new, particularly a man's trying to get to know a woman, you should spend most of the time listening to her talk about herself, and you should make her comfortable talking about herself. You want her to share about her, and you'll share about you too. That is part of the thing. I'm not saying don't do that at all, and don't try to just sidestep every question and not give a straight answer. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying you want to learn about her nature. I mean, that's one of the things that Glover talks about in Dating Essentials for Men, is like the purpose of dating. Like, the earlier you are in the relationship, the more your goal is to, I want to understand what this woman's about so that I can figure out if she would be a good fit for me and I'd be a good fit for her. And the way you do that is by having her talk about herself as much as she's comfortable with. And the way you can keep that going is by asking good follow-up questions. So it's almost like the other side of being a good storyteller. It's like she's got a good story to tell you, and your good follow-up questions will make her a better storyteller.
Right.
So study that and figure out, I would say, just thinking about it off the top of my head, is when she does tell you a fact, get to the how and the why. Like, oh, how did that come about? Or why did it happen that way? Or how did you feel about it? Or
come in with a curious mindset.
Curious in general, but not just curious about when was this? What was it? What year did this happen? Where were you living at the time?
Yeah.
The how and the why will be more valuable to you than the when and the where.
Right. Yeah. Certain words are going to be prompting
for keeping
better responses.
Keeping you both emotionally engaged. The how and the why is where the real meat of any story is.
Right. So, I mean, look at, depending on the question that you're asking, you're going to be leaning towards a one-word answer or you won't be. Right. So that's going to be a one-word answer usually. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas how and why, right. How and why, there's going to be some meat there behind that and some thinking required. Right. So what kind of questions can you ask to generate thinking?
Yes, I agree, because the more somebody's thinking, it's not just thinking. When you're thinking, you're also feeling. And if you're just reciting a script, you don't have to do either of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But again, good follow-up questions can get people off their script, because if you're with a girl who's been on dates and kind of knows what guys ask, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What do you do for a living? It's easy to answer those questions without thinking or feeling very much. But while you can start with those questions to get the conversation rolling, then you focus on something that you find interesting in her answer to that question, and then you drop the how or the why, and then all of a sudden you guys might be in a new area.
I'll throw some what in there too, right? So, what led you to do this, or, what caused this? I
would say that is a why disguised as a what.
Well, I feel like it is, but why could be a little bit confrontational if it's somewhat right. So it's like, well, why did you do this? Or versus what caused this to happen?
Right. If she,
so it's a little bit of a nuance, right?
I left my first husband because he hit me. Why?
Right.
It's not probably not the best answer.
Or the best question. It's not right.
The best
question, Alex.
Response. Yeah, that's not the best response. You're right. No. Okay, one last point that I wanted to make was be ready with compliments, but be careful with compliments. And one way that I think you can, because again, when you compliment somebody, complimenting a beautiful woman is tough because she's been hearing the same compliments for probably her whole life or close to it, right? And just saying, your eyes are beautiful, or your hair's so pretty. Internally, she's probably thinking something along the lines of, I know, or yeah, I've heard, or, if you're just hitting her with something that she's used to hearing, which again, pretty women are used to hearing how and why men think they're pretty. So you got to be a little bit more creative than that, because it also, the easy compliment is the compliment that doesn't feel like it requires much thought. And it also does not set you apart from all the other guys that have complimented her on that thing.
Right. Also look at, try to find something to compliment her on where it required a little bit of creativity and effort on her part. And it wasn't like, oh, you've got pretty eyes, which she came out of the womb with those things. So she had no responsibility. Exactly. So you're not even really complimenting her. You might be complimenting the selection process of her parents. So
correct. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So look, I mean, what kind of jewelry is she wearing? What kind of dress is she wearing? What does the jewelry match the dress? Or the shoes, right? Is there some sort of coordination that went on? Is it something unique? Is it something that, maybe you've got some questions about because you've never seen that kind of thing before, right? There's a lot of things that, hey, is there a story behind, that, those earrings or that necklace, where did you get?
Yeah, that's what.
Right.
Yeah, Dr. Glover talks about that, where whenever he travels, he tries to pick up some sort of an accessory or a piece of clothing, so that when he wears it out and somebody asks him about it, he always has a good story of, yeah, I picked this up in Peru, or I picked this up when I was in London, or something like that. And and that's good advice for men too, which is, be willing to wear some nice accessories and try to make them things that have a good story behind them, so that when somebody either compliments or notices or whatever, you can, that's something, you have something to talk about. Because I think women will often do that intuitively, where they will often have, if they're wearing a piece of jewelry, then I think there's a good chance they have a story and they know the story behind it. So if you remark on that, then you're also giving her something, an experience or something to share with you. The other thing I would say is, even if you are going to compliment her on something, that I would agree with you that complimenting on choices or taste is better than complimenting her on just genetic,
luck.
A roll of the genetic dice that she happened to win. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you are going to compliment her on her eyes or her hair, or, I'd probably stick to those. I don't know that, complimenting a woman that you just met on her breasts or her bottom is probably a good move. But if you are going to compliment on something about her physical appearance, don't just say, you have beautiful eyes. Don't just say, that your hair's pretty, something like that. Start with the I like, or I find it attractive that. And so basically make you the subject of the sentence, and then address how you like the thing, or how you find the thing appealing that you're about to compliment her on. Not just an, objective, like, your eyes are nice. That's like, your car's, I like your car. I like your eyes. It's like you're just addressing,
versus
an objective standard of bring it to you. Like, I like this about you. I find this attractive about you. And because then you're also putting something that you're thinking that she would not know you're thinking, you're putting it out there, which shows a level of courage. It's not just,
there's
your eyes are nice. It's, right. I like your blue eyes, or your blue eyes remind me of ... Like, stuff like that is going to be far more valuable than just like, you have beautiful eyes.
Yep.
All right. That's all the stuff I wanted to talk about in this section. Do you have anything?
All right. I think I'm good as well.
Okay, cool. Well, we made it through. And before we started, I asked you if you had a heart out at 11, and we've gone 22 minutes after that. So thank you for your patience.
My pleasure. It's always a good time.
All right. I will chat with you again soon, Dan.
All right, man. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.